There is a well-known Samoan proverb that states, "E lelele toloa, ai ma'au lava I le vai," which translates to, "The duck will fly all over, but will always return to the water." This is a proverb that contains so much wisdom and resonates with me because of my experience. You see, my parents are from here, American Samoa. My father from the village of Leone, and my mother from Ta'u in Manua. Several years after they married, they moved to Hawaii. I was born and raised in Hawaii, in a small town called Laie. I attended college in Utah, and I met my wife there. She's also from American Samoa, from the village of Waua. We married and eventually had the opportunity to move back here to American Samoa to raise our family. And this is why I love this proverb. "E lelele toloa, ai ma'au lava I le vai." The duck will fly, but will always return back to the water. This proverb usually refers to one leaving his home or homeland and eventually returning to his roots or to where he is from. I feel that I am that duck, returning home, returning to the water. When I started my university studies and looking for a major, I knew I wanted to work with people. I knew I wanted to help people to improve their well-being. I received my bachelor's and master's degree in social work, and that education changed my life forever. I learned about mental health and how important it is in every stage of our lives, from childhood to adolescence and even into adulthood. Mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. Mental health impacts the way that we think, the way that we feel, and the way that we behave. It influences how we deal with stress, how we relate to others, and how we make choices. The education I received not only gave me the knowledge and skills to help people and to improve their well-being, but I also learned a lot about myself. I learned how to recognize my emotions and how my emotions impacted my behaviors. I learned how to process my thoughts and my beliefs and how those impacted the way that I felt and behaved. Mental health helped me to make sense of my personal experiences and also my relationships. But with information so essential and so valuable, I wondered why I didn't learn any of this before. As a young Samoan growing up, I don't ever remember being engaged in discussions about my emotions. The only emotions that I knew were angry, sad, happy, sleepy, and most importantly, hungry. You know, the basic emotions. I learned that I wasn't alone, and that for many Samoans, mental health is not a common topic of discussion and seemingly not a priority. Through my experience here in American Samoa, I've come to realize that the average individual is not well informed about mental health. This is a concern even more so today than in any other time in history. More and more we read in the news issues that pertain to mental health. Issues of sexual violence, sexual assault, drugs and addiction, and domestic violence. We are witnessing the effects of war and with our brothers and sisters returning home trying to cope and deal with experiences that they were exposed to while on deployment. All these issues and many more affect our mental health. Many of these events cause trauma, which are emotional wounds. Many who are experiencing these unfortunate events don't even know how to cope with it. Some turn to drugs, some alcohol, and unfortunately, some even contemplate or attempt suicide. And because many are not informed about mental health, our community as a whole in turn is not very sensitive in the way that we respond. There is a great need for our community to be educated in mental health. After graduating from school, I eventually obtained my license to practice counseling or therapy. Growing up, I thought that counseling was where you go into a room with someone and get hypnotized to do some crazy stuff. But that's not what counseling is about. In counseling, we teach about mental health, the process that helps people to recognize their thoughts, their emotions, and their behaviors, and the impact that they have on an individual's life. Throughout my years of practice, I was able to witness how beneficial counseling was and how mental health and the counseling process can be for people, and see firsthand how it can help to improve people's lives. When the opportunity to move back here to American Samoa surfaced, I thought, great. This is an opportunity for me to serve my people, to give back, and to provide a service that I know will positively impact our people. I worked with a combat veteran who recently retired from the military, and he was trying to readjust to civilian life. In counseling, he eventually mustered up the courage to share something that had been bothering him. He shared that several days ago, he had disciplined his son, and he felt guilty about it. He asked his son to wash the dishes before he got home, and when he returned, the dishes were not done. He said he just got upset, went and beat up his son. His wife jumps in, upset at the veteran, and asks, "Why did you beat up our son?" And his response was, "Because he didn't do the dishes like he was told." The wife responds, "Over dishes? You beat him up over dishes?" So this veteran comes into my office, upset and feeling guilty for what he did, and couldn't reconcile the fact that he beat up his son over dishes. In counseling, I was able to process with this veteran, and by going through the counseling process, he was able to realize that he got upset because his son had a job to do and he didn't do it. See, the veteran explained to me that in the military, when you have a job to do and you don't do it, there could be some severe consequences. It could mean life or death. His son's actions had triggered feelings of insecurity and fears for safety, the same feelings that he experienced during his time in Iraq. The counseling process had helped him to be aware of his thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, and the impact it had on him and his family. And it wasn't about the dishes. I also worked with a couple who the wife had complained that her husband was spending too much money. Every week he would come home with a new appliance. She was frustrated because she said, "We have 20 weed eaters, 15 leaf blowers, and 10 power washers." Her husband explained that whenever they would go shopping and he sees something he likes, he would purchase it. His wife replied, "It wouldn't be so bad, but if we were buying stuff we need, but we don't need 20 weed eaters." Like my previous example, this husband didn't understand why he was doing what he was doing. But through counseling and being able to process his thoughts and his emotions, he realized that ever since he lost his job due to an injury, he became depressed and did not know how to cope. He was an electrician by trade, and an injury to his hand kept him from being able to work steadily with his hands. He bought these appliances and would work on them, tweak them, rewire them to make them more powerful or more fast, and he was trying to prove to himself that he was still capable of doing what he used to do. He enjoyed being able to work with his hands again. This couple realized that it wasn't about the 20 weed eaters or the 15 leaf blowers, but it was about the experience. He was purchasing an experience. When his wife realized that their money was being invested in an experience that helped her husband with his depression, she was more understanding and more accepting. And then she whispered to me and asked, "Do you know where they sell any electronic diamond necklaces?" There is a great need for our community to be educated in mental health and to invest in programs that help to improve our mental health. Through my experience working in the mental health field here in American Samoa, I realized that the average individual is not well informed about mental health. And as a result, I find that our community is not very sensitive to issues regarding mental health and often do not respond appropriately to individuals dealing with normal mental health issues. Being well informed will allow us to be more understanding and accepting of others and allow us to respond appropriately. But to understand why maybe mental health is not a very common topic of discussion, or why the average individual here in American Samoa is not well informed, let me provide some context. I want to make a comparison of traditional Samoa versus modern day Samoa. Traditional Samoa, I will define it here as Samoa before there was any foreign influence. You see, the Samoan culture is a set of customs, practices, and beliefs that guide our everyday actions. This is called Fa'a Samoa, or the Samoan way of life. We are taught this way of living from those who have been here before us, from our ancestors to our elders, chiefs, parents, down to the children. Fa'a Samoa was the only information needed, and in order to survive life in Samoa, that was the only information that we needed. In this system, information flows one way, downward, meaning that information and knowledge was taught by the elders and chiefs who were at the top down to those who are at the bottom of the hierarchy. We have our matai or chief system where decisions and information came from top to bottom, and mechanisms were put into place to make sure that the Fa'a Samoa was adhered to and to challenge or combat any resistance or ideas that would challenge the Fa'a Samoa. As children, we were taught to listen to our elders, learn from those who have been here before us, those who have experience. We were told not to question, just do it, or awokefia, don't be a smart aleck. Know your place, you don't know anything. Individual expression of emotion was not very appropriate because the needs of the group or the family was paramount. Certain topics were taboo, and there were a lot of controls put into place to facilitate this Fa'a Samoa information. But this was such a wise system because in order to survive life in Samoa, the only information that was needed was the Samoan way of living. We didn't need to know what was going on in other parts of the world because that had no relevance to life here in Samoa. There is a Samoan saying that states, Samoa wa uma ona tofi, which I understand it to mean that in Samoa, everything has its place, everything is set. There was no need for discussion of change because our ancestors believed that the Fa'a Samoa was sufficient, and they were right. The practices, customs, and traditions were designed to promote the Samoan way of life. But eventually, through time and through years of foreign intervention, the Fa'a Samoa would constantly be challenged, and exposure to foreign influences, new information, and new technology would begin to challenge the Samoan way of life, the Fa'a Samoa. The practice of trying to control the flow of information have proven to be very difficult. Let's take a look at the dynamics of modern Samoan culture. Our current culture is a culmination of the Fa'a Samoa and years of foreign influence and intervention. We still have the matai system or chief system where information still flows downward. But as you can see, the landscape between traditional Samoa and modern day Samoa is drastically different. People on the bottom are now exposed to much more information. Especially in this day and age with technology and the internet, access to information is at one's fingertips. People are now naturally inquiring and asking about certain topics. Kids are asking parents, why this, why that? But the practices of old are still strong in shutting down any curiosities or any discussions. The same practices of awokefia poko, don't be a smart aleck, know your place. We don't talk about those topics. There are many trying to hold on to the practices of old, thinking that if we abandon those practices, we would compromise our Samoan identity and we would fail to be Samoan. We again hear the saying, Samoa wa uma ona tofi, that everything is already in its place. But in context, this is referring to traditional Samoa. As I've shown, the landscape of modern-day Samoa is immensely different than the Samoa of the past. Times have changed, and the practices of yesterday cannot solve the challenges of today. Our ancestors understood this because of another well-known Samoan proverb, E sui whainga, ai tu mau whaavai. Practices change, but principles remain forever. We need to change our practices. Instead of shutting down discussions or genuine inquiries, we need to promote having discussions, especially with our children. Discussions centered on mental health. Teaching them how to recognize and process their thoughts and emotions. Learning about mental health and how it affects our everyday life. Understanding that there are many individuals who want to reach out, who are looking for help, but get discouraged because many times people make light, make fun, or even invalidate their experiences. Now, some of you might feel that this is a difficult challenge to take on, but I want you to think about our recent trend with regards to physical health. If you look back 10 or 15 years ago, our community was not very comfortable having discussions about our physical health, talking about how much you weigh, what diet you're on, what workouts you're doing. These were not common topics of discussion, but there was a huge push for awareness, mainly because of the epidemics that we're now facing, issues with diabetes, heart disease, etc. There was greater awareness on the benefits of being physically healthy and how it can lead to a better quality of life. And now we see that people are very comfortable discussing their physical health. People talking about their diets, talking about their weight freely, posting pictures of their healthy food online, people wearing clothes like spandex and tights to work, and some even to church. But this level of community comfort has encouraged those who need to work on it to do so and feel okay doing it. I believe the same can happen with mental health. As a community, we need to invest in mental health. The more we are aware of mental health and mental health related issues, the more comfortable we as a community will be in having discussions about it. The more comfortable we are in discussing and having a dialogue about mental health, the more sensitive we will be. The more sensitivity we show, the more those in need will feel comfortable reaching out. Let's continue these discussions, even after tonight. It will only help to improve our quality of life here in American Samoa. Faafetai Telelava, thank you and good night.